President pointed out in his Law Day remarks last year, we govern ourselves in accordance with the rule of law rather than the whims of an elite few or the dictates of collective will.
So last night, Rod Rosenstein sort of exhaled after months of saying nothing and taking barbs from all sides. Those who thought the president should fire him. Then there were those who said that he wanted to wear a wire and remove the president from office. And those who, when he was hired, thought he was a straight shooter, just the right man for the job. So last night, he spoke out on the cusp of becoming a public citizen again.
In fact, some of the nonsense that passes for breaking news today would not be worth the paper it was printed on if anybody bothered to print news these days. One silly question that I get from reporters is it true that you got angry and emotional a few times over the past 2 years? Heck yes, didn't you?
In the end, Rosenstein argued for a less transparent version of the Mueller report, according to this report, one that exposed less about the findings of the investigation. And the Washington Post says that Barr opted for a more public reading. Let's bring in Trey Gowdy, former House Oversight Committee chairman, Fox News contributor. So, Trey, a lot of talk about Rod Rosenstein, speaking out a little bit more about his take on all of this. And I saw on some other networks, they were horrified that he, basically put President Trump and the rule of law even in the same sentence. What do you make of all that?
I was around Rod a lot, so the Rod Rosenstein you just played close up, I got to hear that. Yeah, it's a really hard job. There were days that I disagreed with him. There were days I agreed with him. I never called for his impeachment. Here's where Rod's right. The purpose of the justice system is not transparency. It is fairness. There's a reason defendants don't have to testify. There's a reason lots of evidence never gets before a jury. Sometimes transparency and fairness overlap, but oftentimes they do not. So fairness is the objective of the Department of Justice. And I think Rod is right. This report should not have been made public, certainly not to the extent that it was. But the politics won out over the precepts of the Department of Justice.
There's another line in this story that says this, and it's attributing this statement to Rod Rosenstein from someone who overheard it. It says, it says that Rosenstein said, I give the investigation credibility, in his words. And then at the end, this person characterized him as saying, I can land the plane. And the reporting on this is that this was a discussion during which Mr. Rosenstein was trying to say, look, let me stay on this. We all heard all this stuff about him getting fired and saying he wanted to wear a wire. A lot of outrage that he would say something like that if indeed he did. I can land the plane. How do you read that?
Well, there was there were calls for his impeachment. There were calls for him to be fired. But keep in mind, in the throes of that 25th Amendment news breaking, he got on a plane with President Trump. They rode to Florida. President Trump doesn't have a problem with him. I mean, that's his boss. Sessions was not in charge of the Russia probe. So if President Trump was okay with Rod, I don't know why House Republicans were insisting on impeaching him. And the reality is he was able to land the plane, and he actually landed a plane where he would have landed in another airport. He didn't think the thing should have been made public because we don't publish derogatory information on people that we don't indict. So despite the fact that he disagreed with what the AG Barr was going to do, he helped land the plane.
Yeah. And I just think it's interesting that all of them, Mueller and Rosenstein and Barr, when they came into these positions, they were given a lot of credibility on all sides of the fence. That these were straight shooters. These are men that you can count on to do their job. But because they didn't come out with the conclusion that some people wanted, now they're being ripped to shreds. And he's being ripped to shreds again today. So I guess, we live in a land where if you don't get the answer that you want, there's no such thing as integrity.
Yeah, we're in an outcome determinative world now, a relativistic world, which is one reason I'm happy I'm not there. There are days I agreed and disagreed with Mueller, but there was never a day that I thought the man who had integrity while he was a Marine and integrity while he ran the FBI, I never believed that he just changed. And I don't think Rod changed. I think these are really hard jobs. And we're in an environment where if we disagree with the decision you make, therefore you must be corrupt. Yep. I can't live in that world, and I'm glad I'm not there anymore.
All right. Well, here's Eric Swalwell and what he said about his ongoing commitment to the story that was largely debunked. Watch this.
I accept that I probably should have been out there a little bit earlier, because who knew how many links there were, 200 pages of links. But here's what we know. The Russians helped Donald Trump.
Sure, but to be clear,
Yeah.
so you're no longer maintaining that he is effectively a, quote, Russian asset?
No, I think he acts on Russia's behalf, and I challenge him to show me otherwise.
Trey, what do you think?
President Eric Swalwell, that ought to scare the ever-living hell out of you, Martha. His last sentence is exactly the difference between a prosecutor and a politician. Prosecutors prove that you did something. Politicians make you prove you did not. Did you hear his last sentence? I challenge President Trump to prove that he did not do something. That's what politicians do.
Yeah, that's not the way the law works. Trey, thank you. Always good to see you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
We live in a really nightmare. We live in a really nightmare.